I have some really, really important guests joining me on this podcast episode. I have Ken Olling, CEO and co-founder of Meld. I also have Derrick and Stephen, co-founders of Veritree. And I also have Jeremy Förster, the head of partnerships and executive officer at the Cardano Foundation. They're all here to join me to talk about the last part of the Meld ISPO, where they're donating the funds to the Veritree campaign, what's happening with it, where it's at, and how this is going to impact the last sprint, hopefully the last sprint of this campaign for the Cardano Global Impact Challenge. So let's get into this interview.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining me on this podcast episode. There's a whole lot of things that we want to go through, everything from what Meld is doing at the moment with the ISPO ending all the way to what Veritree is doing as well. So welcome, gentlemen, to the podcast.
Hey, nice to see you again.
Thanks for having us, Pete.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to be here.
So Ken, let's start off with you first. The Meld ISPO is over. It feels like a lifetime, really, especially as a stake pool operator as well. It's like,
exactly.
When is this going to come back? But no, it's been absolutely brilliant to see the journey, the Meld project grow over the last few months as well. The ISP is over. What does that mean for everyone now, and what's happening next?
Well, I mean, now that the ISPO is over, it means we shut down all of our stake pools except for one. That was the initial intent from day one. As to what it actually means beyond this is sort of a big question mark, because, you know, it's not really been done before, and there are a lot of other ISPOs that are coming up now. So right now, the only plan is to try and work with the community and sort of help other people that want to do things like ISPOs, which kind of leads into this last Epoch, where we were talking with the Cardano Foundation, and the idea of extending the ISPO 1 Epoch to be able to support the Veritree project sort of came up. It made a lot of sense. We wanted to sort of make sure that the community was okay with this. So we talked to some people in the community, specifically stake pool operators, and they thought it was fine. Talked to Cardano Foundation and Veritree, and then we said yes, and then we organized with Veritree and Cardano, and off we went.
Jeremy, could you tell us a little bit about this initiative that was put together, the Cardano Global Impact Challenge?
Definitely. So the Global Impact Challenge is helping to solidify the DNA of Cardano as a blockchain for good. And it's looking at and representing the power of a global community that is all working collectively towards one goal. And secondly, these goals should also not only do good for the world, but also showcase some of the capabilities that is inherent to Cardano. So we plan to have annual events for the impact challenges, and the first one that we've chosen is the Cardano Forest.
So how was the Cardano Forest Challenge selected? Was it just something that you guys brainstormed, or was it consulted with the community? What was the planning purpose behind that?
I mean, the word of the year is NFT. And when you look at different blockchains and kind of their competitiveness, a big question comes up is about the cost of energy that's running a blockchain. And we're looking at this in terms of sustainability and also scalability. So we knowing that Cardano inherently has a very low energy consumption, there are some reports that state 1% of the energy for compared to Bitcoin. We think that is great for a technical feature, but we want to leverage this further. And while we were exploring the space of what it is that we could do to be more eco-friendly, we started to reach out to the different community members, such as the Cardano, the Climate Neutral Cardano Stake Pool Group, setting up a community advisory board, as you will, to see what solutions make sense if we're going to tackle climate impact. And after surveying the industry, we came across Veritree. And instantly we had to reach out because we felt that this was a true like synergy and connection of values and the strategy for how to kind of solve the problem of climate impact, and also how to represent real world applications with blockchain technology.
That's absolutely brilliant. And Derrick and Stephen, thank you for joining me on the podcast as well. Can you explain a little bit to the audience what Veritree is and how they're using blockchain technology? Like, I don't see how tree planting really ties into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Veritree has kind of developed over almost the last decade, really. Veritree as a product has really come to fruition over the last few years, but it started through an organization that we actually founded that was an apparel business that funded the planting of trees. And we were planting 10 trees for every item we sold. And over the last decade, we planted over 65 million trees. And the idea was, what we came to realize was over the last almost 9-10 years, was that the challenge of tree planting wasn't actually getting trees in the ground. The challenge was making sure that it was done in an accountable, auditable, and transparent way, and also under the right circumstances that promoted the key issues a lot of nature-based solutions face, which is permanence and additionality and things like that. And so what we quickly realized was there wasn't a solution out there to solve for these issues. And the conversation on climate change was growing every single day. And tree planting as a whole has an incredibly important role to play in that broader transition conversation. It's not a silver bullet, but it's a hugely important part of the conversation. And what we were finding is that while there was all this buzz and sort of conversation around trees being planted, there wasn't a single organization that could confidently say that the tree that I bought wasn't the same tree as somebody else. And so that was really the function of why we built Veritree, was to solve that issue, was to solve this issue of transparency and accountability within the restoration space and provide really truly proof of ownership, but also tying everything to that proof of ownership in a way that was, ensuring that the work was being done the right way. The trees were being planted correctly. There was ongoing monitoring to ensure survivability, and into sort of the 10, 20-year lifespan and beyond of those ecosystems, that they're actually being managed effectively. And so you sort of asked about the application of blockchain, and really, I think it comes down to a lot of what the broader climate conversation is facing, which is this kind of arguably made up product that's being sold, whether it's carbon, whether it's trees, and blockchain being used as a way to bring transparency and accountability and sort of a proof of ownership to that, we believed was critical to the success of the product that we were trying to create.
I've always wondered how those like tree planting certificates and whatnot worked. Like I'd previously in my old business, I bought like carbon credits or tree planting to offset the carbon emissions that our business created. So I'd go to the website, I'd pay for a tree planting thing, a couple of trees appear on my screen, and I felt a little bit better. But I had no idea if it actually meant that trees were planted or not. So this is a really unique way of actually creating that transparency, and people can actually see where the trees are being planted or being verified that being planted. But with the NFTs, and how does that fall into place? Like how does the whole NFT side of things come into play? And how do I actually know that where my tree is? How do I know that my tree is still existing? And you mentioned permanence as well. What happens when I buy these NFTs and contribute to the impact challenge? I have the trees planted, but then a forest fire comes through and wipes everything out. Here in Australia, we have forest fires every few years, so we're quite used to it and having huge amounts of the forest wipe out. So how does that all work?
Yeah, I'll jump in here for that. To start with the last point, there really is no way to stop the forest fire from coming in with NFTs. So that's a problem that's still in the works. But the reason why we chose to go the NFT route, and this has been a long time in the making, is the way that we did this with the initial tree offering in the Cardano forest was when you contribute ADA to the project, we issue a Veritree token, which is almost, it's a fungible token that's a promise to plant. So then what we do is we schedule that planting to take place. In this case, it's in Kenya. And as those planting sessions get submitted from the ground, we unlock those trees to be redeemed and minted as NFT certificates. So depending on how much of how much ADA you contributed to the project, you can redeem those trees for that certificate, as well as in some tiers, some collectible art along with it. So the idea is the trees that we issued you in the first place, those Veritree tokens, once they're redeemed, we burn those tokens. Not burn them in the sense of the Australia wildfire, but just so we can't reissue those tokens again in the future. So you're seeing, okay, these trees came from the ground, they were submitted through these records at the planting site, and then they were issued to all of these individuals based on their redemption period. So with the 500,000 trees that are scheduled to be planted for 2022, they're going to be released in blocks for those redemptions starting in January.
Wow, cool. Very soon. So just as a NFT collector myself, what type of metadata and information will be on those redeemable NFTs? Would I see how many trees I'm planted? Will I know the location of the trees? Like, is there a GPS coordinate or something? Anything interesting like that?
Yeah, definitely. So there'll be an image attached to every planting session that happens. Now, every single individual tree doesn't get a GPS coordinate. What happens with a typical planting session is a crew of 10, 15, 20 individuals will go out and plant. In terms of mangroves, we're looking at 10 to 12, 15,000 trees in one session. So those trees are grouped into a single session, which will have a GPS coordinate. And then from that point, there's follow-up, and we can talk about permanence and all of that. But we do survivability reports over the months and years after those sessions have been recorded. So the metadata that's attached to that NFT is linked to a repository that will continuously get updated. So at the 3-6 month time, there is a survivability report for that area that says, hey, we're at 80% survivability. This is what's happened. Here's some update photos. So you can ensure that the trees are still surviving. That being said, in some cases, we're going to be transparent about it. And if a flood comes in or a storm comes in and wipes out a certain portion of that area, we're going to record that, and that'll be amended to that original repository. So you'll be able to see it forever, and you'll be able to see those trees growing over time.
That's really cool. I love the ability to access that information from the NFT too. How do you guys actually choose which countries to plant in, and what type of trees do you plant? I'm assuming you're planting native trees to the region, but there'll be different types of trees that affect the amount of carbon that's being reduced in the atmosphere. Are you purely planting based on reforestation of the native area, the revegetation of the area?
Absolutely. I think, the way that we look at the different sites, we sort of focus on three core aspects. First being the environmental impact. So that buckets in everything that you just alluded to around, what is the carbon sequestration potential of these forests? A mangrove forest is dramatically different than a pine forest in sort of northern BC. And so thinking through the environmental impact as well, from things like an ecosystem rehabilitation and, what's the long-term protection opportunity. We also want to make sure that it's an environmental impact that is net positive. So in a lot of North American planting sites, especially, what we found is that planting is going to happen with or without us. it's federally mandated, it's going to take place. We want to actually take part in projects that have an additional environmental impact. The second pillar for us is really that social impact. We look for projects that have a truly significant and meaningful and also measurable impact on the communities, whether it be sort of an employ to plant model, a job creation, food security, education, that sort of thing. When we've planted in areas like Madagascar or Kenya, this is an employ to plant model that helps support communities. And then in other areas, we've done fruit tree planting and things like that. So we want to see a meaningful social impact that is long-term as well, and provide things like education and long-term benefits. And then the third and final one is our ability to actually access the data and audit these projects effectively. The reality is that not every project is sophisticated enough to layer in this level of sort of data transparency. Low internet environments, some of these areas have challenging literacy issues. So trying to actually get through those challenges, it kind of whittles us down to the projects that we feel are representative and ones that we can put a Veritree stamp behind.
Wow, it's quite a selection process. I didn't realize it went through so much detail. For me, you'd just look at a bit of land that has been deforested and just start planting again, right? That's my thought process. But no, it's really good to understand and know a little bit more about all of that.
And Pete, just on that, it's such an interesting point you made too, because a lot of the general perspective of tree planting is it's a big plot of dirt that suddenly becomes green. And I think this is actually one of the core features of what we built at Veritree, is that in the larger ecosystem of technology solutions focused on restoration, they're by and large, all focused on the geospatial sort of Earth observation side of things. When in the reality, the vast majority of good restoration projects aren't big plots of dirt that are suddenly turning green. They're restoring forests that still have some canopy established and things like that. So what Veritree has done is we've bridged this first day zero to sort of a year 5 gap through ground level data. And that's where this blockchain and the NFT piece that Stephen came in really is important, because year 5 onwards, our tool is able to leverage those Earth observation and remote sensing technologies. But we've actually done the hard work in the initial period to make sure that those trees have survived to that point.
Wow, that's really cool. So how is the Global Impact Challenge going then at the moment? I know it was announced and released at the Cardano Summit in September earlier this year, but how has that campaign been going at the moment? Jeremy, perhaps you'd like to comment in regards to how the campaign's going right now.
No, I do want to highlight one thing that's really specific here, that with Veritree, excuse me, we're looking at adding a social layer to SDG financing and reporting, and that is something that hasn't really been done before in a way that is publicly available and fully transparent. With the NFTs that's being done, and one of the things that I really like about this project and with the ecosystem is that we're also bringing people together to show how Cardano can be utilized in a variety of interesting ways that promotes engagement. So for the NFTs themselves, we have it's fully on-chain digital assets that are being designed by Stellar Hoods and Cardano trees. So there's like some evolution to the NFT asset, which is quite interesting. And we launched, at the end of September. And currently we have close to 525,000 trees. And that is already a huge success and a fantastic milestone to have. And especially because this is fully community driven. And where we're at today with Meld entering the picture is taking things up one more level of bringing different projects within the Cardano ecosystem together to further leverage what's already been done and add to this challenge.
I didn't realize that you brought in Cardano Trees project into this to do some of the artwork. That's one project I missed out on, and I absolutely love the evolutionary aspect of the NFT. So if anyone actually has seen that before and missed out, you can get your Veritree token and potentially get some new and creative artworks with this one. So I'm really excited to hear that. Earlier this year at COP26 in Glasgow, there have been pledges by many, many different nations around the world to end deforestation, which is absolutely amazing. Even Brazil signed up to that at the COP26, where they said they were going to stop deforestation. Means the Amazon might still exist for generations to come. But in regards to the reduction of carbon emissions, how much of an impact does tree planting have to this Paris Agreement of trying to keep the global temperatures to that 1.5 degrees pre-industrial averages?
Sure, I can jump in here. I think at the end of the day, what the IPCC report came out and said, it identified 3 outcomes over the next 30 years and using 2050 as sort of like the target date. And effectively, our goal right now is to get to 1.5 degree of warming. In order to do that, we need to decarbonize and get to net zero. And what we need to do is have our emissions over the next decade, and then over the next 20 years thereafter, basically continue to reduce and then also build up the capacity to offset and remove. So the reality is that as an economy, we will never truly get to a entirely zero carbon utilization economy. So there will be an important portion of both removing and offsetting emissions. And so really the focus for right now and the belief is that nature-based solutions, and so tree planting is a significant part of that sort of nature-based solutions, but other things are included in there, like, avoided deforestation, kelp, things like that. Right now, the expectation and belief is that should make up 1/3 of our global net removals of carbon. So when you think of that sort of 20 to 30 year period that we're looking at right now, nature-based solutions can and should make up as much as 1/3 of our global net removals. And the reality is, where we stand today, tree planting is the most scalable and arguably impactful solution. And I would put all of that with the caveat of when done right, because I think that's the big criticism. And the criticism around tree planting has often been that either A, people treat it as a silver bullet, which it's not, or B, this sort of running joke, which 100 million trees got planted and got purchased and one actually got planted. And so really, I think our approach and our belief is that in order to achieve that 1/3 of our net removals that we need to start today. Trees don't start removing carbon day one at the same rate that they will in day 10, 20, 30. And so that's frankly why this work that we're partnering on with Meld and with Cardano is so important.
Very true. You plant a sapling, it's not going to do much for a good few years. So it's very important that we start right now and make an impact and change to the fight against global climate change. But in terms of that, does that mean the Cardano blockchain can be considered carbon neutral or have its footprint reduced? And how's that even measured? And what are the details there? Like, can you actually record and work out how much carbon the blockchain is producing? I know, like with Bitcoin and Ethereum, they've got these stats and numbers of how much power it's using. So how do we actually record, monitor that, and quantify that into certain numbers so that we know how many trees need to be planted and offset in the future?
Yeah, so this whole, research was started by the Climate Neutral Cardano group of stake pools, where they actually sat down and tried to calculate how much CO2 is getting produced by stake pool operators. And we've come to basically an early estimate, which says like, okay, if we planted 218,000 beech trees, that would be enough to theoretically say that we are, carbon neutral. But there's a few things that you need to account for here. And I want to you say that word again, account or carbon accounting, and really emphasize this as carbon science. So we have the years in the past, not just 2021, but 2020. We have years in the future for our growth. So there's a few variables here to look at. And there's also getting a true industry standard definition of reviewing a blockchain in full for its total CO2 footprint. And one of the challenges with that is actually getting reporting from stake pool operators, because Cardano is an open system. And all the information that we have is from voluntary reporting. So there's a lot of caveats here, right? But we do have a general good estimate of where we're at today. And so, and also if you look at the sequestration rate for different trees, a beech tree versus a mangrove tree captures carbon in very different ways. So if it's mangrove trees, we're looking at maybe around 20,000 mangrove trees. So if this is a process that we're starting today, and we believe that by having 1 million trees, that is a good cover overall for the Cardano ecosystem in terms of the footprint. But then there will be a lot more steps in the future of actually going through and validating what is the footprint and exploring this more. It's still very young, but again, it doesn't mean that we can't do something good now. So we're not just planting trees, so we're doing land restoration. We're doing local community development. We're rebuilding, areas that have washed away for the natural habitats. And that is something that I think we can all be really proud of as an action that is happening now. So really, the CO2 cover of being climate neutral is kind of a byproduct to everything else that's great about this initiative.
Very much so. It's more than just the tree planting. It's so much more the whole social aspect, the economy, and everything else that's around it. So with the last epoch here, so hopefully not everyone has moved their ADA off the Meld stake pools at the moment and is still staking and realized this last epoch is still there as well. How much ADA could be raised in this last epoch for the Impact Challenge?
I think it depends on, how people are going to behave. But from what we've seen so far, we're looking at somewhere between 100 and 200,000 ADA for the epoch. So everything sort of crescendoed toward the end. So it built up and built up and built up. So there was a lot of people. There was some like 450 or 500 million ADA that were locked up at the end of the epoch of the last part of the ISPO. And so we've tried to work very closely and get the message out as best we could to the community to let them know that they can leave it in for that one last epoch, and that will help tremendously in regards to getting the Cardano forest over the line.
That's absolutely awesome. That'd be a huge increase to it. Does that mean anyone that hasn't purchased their Veritree tokens may miss out? Like it will hit that cap? Is there a cap, or will it go over that funding challenge limit?
So we haven't put a hard cap on the project itself. We do have a cap on the capacity of the polygon of the planting site within Kenya. We intend to explore different ways that we can open up sites in the future, but right now there's a cap at 1 million trees. So in terms of getting art and some of those Cardano trees, custom items, there might be a limit on that in the near future here.
So that's quite a bit of ADA that's being contributed to that last epoch for the Veritree campaign. So is there anything else in regards to that might be interesting to the audience to hear about?
Yeah, part of when COP26 was happening, we launched a period of time where we were going to be contributing or matching the donations that came in, and we wanted to extend that to what comes in through this last epoch here with Meld. So we'll be matching the amount of trees that come in there and trying to push us further across that finish line. So very exciting.
Wow. Okay. So essentially donate more and you guys have to do more work. Great. Cool. So after the ITO process and Global Impact Challenge finishes, is this project going to continue? Will there be continuous initiatives? Will there be more things from Veritree and Cardano in the future? Or it will be a growing partnership for the next generations?
So I think one thing to be cognizant about is that Veritree onboards enterprises when they want to plant trees for their own companies, right? So Mogo Bank is using Veritree for every credit card transaction. They're planting, I think, 1 tree. So, how many enterprises can Veritree onboard for tree planting? And all of those trees will be accounted for on the Cardano blockchain. So like you'll hear a lot of upcoming announcements, in the future. And yeah, I mean, there are other things in the works right now that are not finalized. But when it comes to anything that has to deal with social good and SDGs, there's a lot of UN agencies and like NGOs that are very interested in this type of application. So there's a lot of conversations happening.
So what can people do right now? So where do we go to actually purchase these Veritree tokens? How do we donate to the Global Impact Challenge? What do people need to do?
They can go to the ito.veritree.com and there's a spot there they can see the wallet address to contribute ADA to. And once that contribution's been made, they will get issued Veritree tokens. And then they can stay up to date on that page for when we're doing the redemption periods. So there's no sort of formal centralized sign-up process. So we're not reaching out to anyone via email or anything. So we'll be posting that as well as the Cardano Forest page where we're showing the area and the impact that it's having. And that's going to be launching in the next week or two. So very exciting. And then I guess they could also leave your ADA staked with Meld. That would help as well.
Just for a little bit longer. Yeah, just that little bit longer. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I'll make sure I put all the links to everything in the show notes down below so that everyone can find all the relevant places to go and what they will need to do, especially around the ITO of the Veritree process. Thank you very much, everyone, for explaining and giving us all a better idea of how this tree planting and everything works. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It was great seeing you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Pete.
Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about Veritree and the Cardano Global Impact Challenge as well. All the links are to it down below. You can find out a little bit more about the ITO, how to participate, and how to get some of these Veritree tokens so that you can help fight climate change. How cool is that? You can actually have that social impact, engage with the community, have a really cool looking NFT. I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to actually seeing the artwork. If you haven't seen the Cardano Trees project, check it out. It's a evolving NFT. It's amazing concept. You can have a little NFT tree. It's got a geolocation, a GPS location. You can look it up. And as the seasons change, the tree changes and evolves and grows over time. So I'm hoping some of those aspects move into the Veritree project and their NFT as well. So I'm crossing my fingers. I'm hoping it's something really cool, something really collectible like that. But like I said, not only will you be collecting something really cool and nifty, a nifty NFT, you'll be able to actually help fight climate change and have a global impact that way as well. So many different aspects to this project, all the social good, and all being done on the Cardano blockchain, which is absolutely amazing. Using that blockchain technology to make global changes like this. Absolutely awesome. Please give us that thumbs up, click that subscribe button, hit the notification bell if you love our content. I'm going to bring more and more brilliant stuff like this, more interviews, anything I can get from the Cardano ecosystem.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debating.